What's going on, YouTube? We are live here at the Suits compound, and we've got some fun things we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about 22 caliber, the workhorse caliber. Really appreciate Robbie Wheaton for being here from WheatonArms.com, and been a gunsmith for over 20 years, and has WheatonArms.com that does a lot of Glock aftermarket parts, some of the best triggers, bar none, on the market for Glocks.
Yeah, we got barrels. Our copper triggers are in stock.
They're beautiful too.
Got those finished up. They're in stock. So finally glad to get that project finished up.
Yeah, so the flat face trigger, man, it's crisp, it clean break. It's just beautiful. And so we've got that coming up. And so check out Wheaton Arms. Also, he does custom gun work. And again, you can check that out. Plus, do I need to talk about the other? We talked about it last week. The GoMed gear.
You can talk about it.
GoMed gear. GoMed gear. We've got that coming up. Robbie's going to be doing some things with medical, and so we'll be talking quite a bit about that coming up. But everything's coming up online, and you can go to gomedgear.com and check that out.
And newsletter. Make sure you sign up for a newsletter for GoMed Gear and for Wheaton Arms. So we do a bi-weekly newsletter, coupon codes and stuff, save you some money, lots of gunsmithing tips and stuff in there. So it's a great newsletter. But if you get a chance, sign up for that as well.
Yeah, check it out because it's a great resource, And Robbie and I have been buddies for a long time, and just top-notch stuff. And I'm not saying that just because we're buddies. It just is. Also, Sarah Mack for setting up everything for us. You'll be over on the comments. And we'll be taking some questions in just a few minutes. Also, we appreciate USCCA for sponsoring today's episode. And there's a link down below in the description. It is an affiliate link. But guys, if you don't have some kind of self-defense liability insurance and you're carrying or you're depending on a gun for home defense, guys, you really need some kind of legal protection. There's a number of them out there, but USCCA to me is the best. I've been a member for a long time before they started working with us.
Dude, I tell you, from some of the court cases that I've testified in as an expert witness in the past, people that didn't have legal protection, in most cases, literally lost everything that they had during the legal battle.
Right.
It's just so financially taxing to try and pay for all of that a lot of times while you're in jail.
Right.
And, to be able to have that resource, and especially as cheap as it is, to be able to have that resource, it's invaluable. Absolutely invaluable.
It gives you peace of mind. And there's a lot of training and a lot of reciprocity maps, and there's a great magazine. I mean, there's just a lot of benefits. So check out USCCA. We really do appreciate them joining with us. All right. Today we're going to talk about
my favorite subject.
Robbie's favorite subject, 22 long rifle.
Yes, sir.
The workhorse caliber. Guys, and 22 is the most common worldwide. Worldwide. Started out in 1884. It's actually 5.56 or 5.6 by 15 millimeter R. That's the technical or the detailed name for it. It is a rimfire caliber, and that means that on the rim of the cartridge is where the primer is, and that's why it's called rimfire. It has a hit on the rim. And guys, and any of you guys know what 22 is, but we're going to talk about some cool things about 22. And guys, if you don't have a 22, it to me is one of the most important firearms in my collection.
Absolutely.
And it's one that I use for things around the house more than any other
It's
thing.
probably the most used firearm in my entire safe.
Right.
Is 22s.
Right.
Whether it's training or
we'll get into that.
Yeah. all the stuff.
All the stuff. All the details,
all the tomfoolery.
Yeah, but they come in rifle. You have pistol. You have revolvers. There is even some smooth bore shotguns. You can put an insert in the shotgun to be able to fire 22. And then there are conversion kits. The CMMG 22 conversion is just awesome. And there are even Colt made the Colt Ace.
Yep.
For 45 caliber.
CZ's got the Cadet.
Right.
Yep.
So there's a lot of conversions, but there's a lot of firearms that are the same size and dimensions as their bigger brother that shoot 22. And most of the big companies carry those.
That's right. Well, the AR-15 is a prime example. There's multiple companies that make 22 long rifle complete guns that exactly mirror the 5.56 caliber rifles.
Right. Now, and there's some that you can actually adopt a lot of your Ruger 1022s with different stocks.
That's right.
We just did a review on the Tipman M2, the M4 22, and man, that is a fantastic firearm.
That is hands down my favorite AR platform 22 there is. It's got the aluminum upper and lower receivers. It literally feels like you're picking up an AR-15.
Right.
If you didn't look at the bolt and see the little short throw on the bolt, that's the only tell that when you're looking at it, the weight and the feel, the trigger and everything. I mean, it is an exact replica of its big brother.
Well, and then we also did some testing with full auto, and it ran like a top.
Yes.
I mean, it just runs. So, and one of the things about 22, though, and we're going to talk about some pros, but we're going to talk about a few cons toward the end. But, 22 is not quite as reliable as your centerfire. In fact, 25 ACP was designed because 22 wasn't always that reliable. Now, things are a lot better than they used to be as far as their processes.
That's right. Yeah, with the biggest problem you have with 22 is getting the priming compound evenly distributed around the rim of the case.
Right.
And that's where a lot of times you get like primer strikes, you pull the trigger, you get a click, and that's all. You take the round out, turn it 180 degrees, stick it back in the chamber and pull the trigger and it fires. Because you hit a spot inside the rim that doesn't have any priming compound.
Right.
So and even today, that's still probably the biggest negative to 22 long rifle, especially a lot of your cheap bulk pack stuff, is the inconsistency with the priming compound in the rims.
Right. But typically, I mean, we have very little trouble with 22, but it is a little more than you would with your centerfire. Now, one of the big things, and a lot of times I'll say this when I'm doing a review of a 22, is that the cost, even today at today's prices, it's a lot cheaper to shoot than any other caliber.
That's right.
You can buy them in the 500 bolt packs. You can buy a case of it for a lot cheaper than you can buy centerfire calibers. And a lot of that has to do with the way the brass is. They do mass production on these 22s. And so, 22 is just really easy to get into, which makes it great for first-time shooters.
That's right.
And we'll get into some of those things. But the one thing is it's low report, it's low recoil, and it's low muzzle blast. So one of the things that I always do when I take a new shooter out, and some people say, well, let's go ahead and get the full size. One of the things, they're very nervous about pulling that trigger. And when they pull it and it's 22 and they can get that lighter recoil, they're like, oh, that's not so bad. And then when they get used to shooting that, then I move them up to the next caliber. And typically I'll go straight to 9mm after that. I know I took Seth, my son Seth, his girlfriend, she'd never shot before. And so we took her down to the range and I gave her a 22. And I told her exactly how to do it. One thing about women, too, women will do what you tell them. I mean, if you're saying, now, if you're a husband, it's not always the same.
It doesn't work that way. Yeah.
But if you have a man can always, or a woman for that matter, but women just tend to, you say, grip it this way, hold it this way, do it like this. And they tend to do it. Men, they'll say, oh, yeah. Wham, and they're shooting all over the place at first.
It's because a lot of women, they don't tend to have that bravado and that machismo that men have, to where, you can't tell me anything. I know how to do this.
I'm an expert.
Exactly. Women are, they're much more prone to listen and learn to do things the right way the first time than men are. Right. We like to fail several times before we get it right.
Yeah, we want to learn. we don't read the directions. We're just going to get out there and figure it out.
We're going to learn the hard way.
But anyway, I took Seth's girlfriend out, and she right off, she was just boom, 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 hitting the steel, doing a great job. And so I gave her a 9mm to shoot. And I said, all right, you're going to have more recoil. There's some things about it. So I just want you to be aware of it. And so she takes that first shot and it goes, wham! And she goes, whoa! And then she goes, bam, 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 bam. And she empties the magazine and she goes, what a rush. And I said, Seth, that's a keeper. But, it's great to be able to get them accustomed at first. And then you can lead them into more. And two, it allows them to manipulate the firearm, to change your magazines out. One of the things, though, I like about 22 is, especially if you're having any kind of issues, because sometimes guns can be just finicky with the brand you're using. And so you need to find the right brand. I know years ago, I had one of those Jennings J22s. Those things were cheap.
Yep.
I think they were like $79. But and they would be Jam-O-Matics. They were Jam-O-Matics. But if you use CCI mini mags, they would function, and they would function very reliably. but I had to find that right caliber. The Beretta Model 21 is another one.
That's right.
It needs
that one can definitely be a little finicky.
Yeah, and it needs those CCI mini mags to me, and that's really what I like to use. But here's the other side. On the Fiocchi 22 long rifles, they are about the same, and they even look exactly the same. And I've had really good success with those. So while I've been a big, and of course, Fiocchi sends the ammo, they sponsor our ammo, but I'm really glad that it's really reliable ammo.
Well, and I tell you, I didn't even realize up until recently that Fiocchi made rimfire ammunition.
Yeah.
I thought they just focused on centerfire stuff and shotgun shells. I've used their shotgun shells and their centerfire stuff for years.
Right.
But I didn't even realize they made rimfire ammunition.
Well, they're the largest manufacturer of ammunition in the country. And they do a great job. I mean, we shoot a lot of Fiocchi.
Yeah.
Tens of thousands of rounds. And we have no problems.
No.
And the thing is, I wouldn't shoot. I mean, after a while, if I start having a lot of problems, I'd be like, okay, guys, I really appreciate it, but we got to have some reliable ammo. So, it's really a blessing, really. And so, especially now today. Okay, so you take your first time shooters out, you train them. I mean, it makes it great.
One of the big things that I found with a 22 when you're taking a new shooter out is because it does have a low muzzle blast and it does have low recoil, it allows that new shooter to really focus on their fundamentals, their sight alignment, their sight picture, their trigger control, their grip, their stance, everything else that's involved with shooting other than actually pulling the trigger and the recoil of the gun, because it takes most of the recoil out.
Right.
So it allows them to be much more comfortable very early on and really focus on their fundamentals instead of getting beat up by the recoil of the gun. And, they're having an issue on the target, but they don't know what they're doing because of the recoil of the gun.
Right. That's exactly right. But also it's great for hunting. I mean, it's been a hunting caliber from the beginning. It's great for small game. What's really funny is a lot of poachers, because we used to live in Western North Carolina and there's a lot of forest land up there.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the guys, not personally that I knew, but a lot of guys would go out and poach, and they would use 22 because it's a low report, but they're still killing deer.
Yep.
So, there is a definite lethality to 22, and it's one of those things that's kind of underestimated.
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing in a survival situation. A 22 is a great tool because you can take larger game with it with proper shot placement.
Right. And you get in there close, and then you can, but, and two, a lot of things, I always like a 22. Well, I usually carry a handgun. I don't always carry a 22 hunting, but, a lot of times people carry 22 because if they get on next to their game that they've taken down with a rifle, and then the animal's still alive, and so they dispatch it with a 22 instead of a rifle in close range. That's not a good thing. So it's really great. But two, just for training in general, going out to the range. I'll tell you a little story. And this was a new shooter. I mean, he'd shot before, even on the Glock before, but he bought a little Walther P22, and he'd gotten the guy when he bought it, and this was during all this scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy that he bought it from gave him a box of Federal. Well, I was kind of like, oh my, because it was the bulk Federal. And sometimes those guns, you're just finicky with that kind of ammunition. This doesn't have quite the power to function the pistol. And so I carried some CCI mini mags down there with me, and he got it out and he'd shoot around and it would jam. And so he'd clear it and he'd shoot around and it would jam. Well, I let him go through that whole magazine because what he did was the first one, he'd shoot it and he'd jam and he's fiddling. He wasn't comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was I started showing him, I said, okay, pull the slide back, lock it, drop your magazine, and go ahead and then enter your magazine back in and put a fresh round in. And he'd do it and he'd jam. And I said, drop your magazine. He'd drop it. And I said, pull it back. And man, it didn't take long before he was like, choo, 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 choo. Bam, boom, 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 boom. And so, it really allowed him to be able to train even with malfunctions.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do have some malfunctions, it's actually, it can be used as a training aspect. So, if you do have any firearm, whether it's, 22 long rifle or not, it's a great way to train. But honestly, most 22s, we put the CCI mini mags in it and it went pop, 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 pop. And by that time he was like, bap, 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 bap. So it was really an opener, even though, I'm kind of aware of it, but it just really watched him being so nervous and being awkward with the gun and how it all came together. And so, it's just one of those things when people become more accustomed and they get more just fiddling with their guns. That's why it's really important to practice changing out your magazine, racking your slide, and doing those things. And so, just learning those training basics. Plus,
one thing that you don't want to do though, when you're using your 22 for training, is you don't want to do dry fire practice with a 22.
That's right.
Because the firing pin can hit the top of the chamber, and you can either cut a little dimple in the top of your chamber, which will roll metal down into the chamber and cause feeding issues, or you can break the tip on your firing pin. Right. So they do make snap caps for 22s. And if you're going to be doing dry fire practice with your 22, make sure you get some snap caps for it.
Right, because that rim fits around the chamber.
It does. That's right.
And so when it goes into the chamber, that rim is what it's hitting. So it definitely can do that. And it'll tell you not to dry fire your 22s. It's really important to keep that. But dry fire practice is really important.
It is. Yep.
So, okay, now target. One thing about 22 is it's just very accurate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a very accurate little caliber. And so, going out and setting up a target, it's funny. I learned real good accuracy with a rifle, with a pellet rifle.
Yeah.
And it was one where I would shoot and I would get all my fundamentals down. And then I have to break open that stupid barrel, and put the pellet in. But that's really how I did it. But the same applies to a 22 because you can get that accuracy down and you can really get your skill set.
When even with your semi-automatic 22 pistols, the majority of them are blowback operated. So it's got basically a fixed barrel and a floating slide.
Right.
So, and that fixed barrel is generally a very accurate barrel. If it's got a good crown and everything cut on it, those fixed barrel 22 pistols are generally very accurate right out of the box.
Right.
So you don't get a whole lot of, because like with a centerfire gun, you get the barrel unlocking, locking, your lockup has to be timed and everything. Everything's got to function perfectly. With a 22, with it being blowback operated and the barrel not moving, they're just inherently more accurate.
Right. Now, we're going to open it up to some questions in a second. I want to give you a fair warning. Sarah Mac's going to be watching. But if you have some questions, mainly regarding 22, but if you don't, we can still, jump in there. But we're going to go on for a couple of more points, and then we're going to jump into the questions, unless we have some already. Okay, so we can put those in. All right. Okay, so accuracy, definitely. I love shooting it. I love getting the accuracy, and you get this little tiny group.
Oh, yes.
It makes it nice. It gives you confidence. I'll tell you a little story. I had a buddy of mine. He had a 9mm pistol, and he hadn't had a lot of experience shooting, but he had some. And he said, okay, I'm going to test out some of this ammo. And so he puts up a target, and he starts shooting. And I mean, it's just all over the paper. But it was in the spot, but it's all over the place. It wasn't a group. And I didn't say anything. He's a good friend of mine. I thought, we'll work on that later. But because he was really proud, and he was like, oh, yeah, you see, it's how this does. And then he pulled out a 22 revolver, and there was a little circle at the top of the target, and he put all of them dead center in that target. I mean, just dead center. And so when he did that, I said, you can do that with that 9mm. And he was like, what? And I got the 9mm, and I shot a group, real tight group. And I said, the thing is you're anticipating the recoil. And so it gave us a time to be able to talk through it. And so it was really good. And he was like, wow, I didn't really realize that. And so, it's just such a great training tool.
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You're not having, with the 22, you're not having to focus on the recoil of the gun. You can focus on your fundamentals. Where he was shooting the 9mm, it's got the recoil and everything, and he's not focused on his fundamentals.
He's anticipating the recoil.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and two, guys, people do anticipate recoil. One thing that's funny for us is we've been shooting for years, and there are times where I will flinch just because of whatever reason. But one thing too is sometimes you're anticipating the recoil. You're just waiting for that recoil, and you're getting your hands ready. So when it, it's not that you're flinching as in fear.
No,
you're just pulling back. You're anticipating it a little bit.
And it's, I don't even think you're anticipating, because anticipating is a conscious movement. Yet what we tend to see is when you pull the trigger and it goes like this, it's more of a subconscious reaction to your body waiting on the recoil to happen.
Right.
So, but I don't think it's not a conscious reaction. You're not doing one of these numbers.
Yeah, before you fire.
Right. No, it's your subconscious automatically reacting to the recoil that it knows is about to happen after you pull the trigger.
But sometimes I steal once in a while off. One thing too, and this is a little bit off the subject, but one of the things we used to do a lot was we would take a pistol, and I would get behind my buddy and I would give him the handgun, and he wouldn't know if there was a round in the chamber or not. And it was a great training tool because then you could see that when you pulled the trigger, did you flinch or were you able to keep it steady? And so that was one thing that we used to do a lot. And so, we do it. After a while, though, you start getting then you get nervous about it after a while. So then you start it starts to play a mind game. So, target, now competition, a lot of competitive opportunities out there. And one thing I will say, and Robbie knows because he has been in the competitive circles for a long time in different disciplines.
Yep.
But and I've been in a number of them, the IPSC and the IDPA and stuff like that. But 3-gun, all those different things. But one thing about competing is that it really fine tunes your skills.
It does. That's right. All your weapon manipulation skills, your basic fundamentals of marksmanship, grip, stance, positional shooting, orthodox and unorthodox positional shooting. Competitive shooting really, really teaches you how to take that to a very high level.
Right. Well, and you're competing against other people.
That's right.
So, against time. Against time. So, that's one of the big things. We don't really use the shot timers.
No.
We just don't.
We did early on, probably
we
10, 11, 12 years ago. We used it quite a bit back then, but it's been a long time since we've been out to the range with a shot timer.
Yeah, but a lot of people do, and it's a great tool to use.
Great training tool.
But, if you really want to get into learning, and it's almost like you have this pressure that helps you to become a better shooter. Whereas you just go out to the range, you're shooting, it's kind of like when you're going to play golf by yourself. You're just hitting it, and if you mess up, you're like, I'll throw another ball down. But if have your buddies with you and you're highly competitive buddy, you can really improve. In fact, I have a good friend of mine. He had worked for the CIA for years, and we used to do a lot of competitive shooting, going to these events. And so we would go, and he would always do very well, but he would pick up his Colt officers. That's what he would compete with. Everybody else has, the government models, and we're like, he's got the officers, and it was the lightweight officers. And he's sitting there and he's shooting, and he still stayed right with us. One time they said, okay, we're going to put a prize up. And I think it was like $50 or something. Man, all of a sudden he went whoop, and man, he kicked everybody's butt. I mean, he just, so motivation with your shooting, and a lot of times it has to do with, taking it seriously. So, going out with your buddies and competing a little bit makes it good because it's like iron sharpens iron, and it kind of makes you a better shooter. So, competitive shooting is definitely a big one. Let's talk about self-defense.
It's better than a rock.
It's better than a rock. It's definitely the lowest, maybe 22 short, but as far as 22, as far as from most experts, they're going to say, don't, 22 is too dangerous. But you testified in a case one time.
I have.
You don't have to go into details. You can just talk about what
there was a shooting involving a 22, and the majority of the rounds were through and through shots. I mean, they went through and exited, and it really depended on because he had like several different brands of ammunition in the magazine. So, and it ran, so that was kind of the surprising part. But it was interesting how some of the brands of ammunition really flattened out and mushroomed to like a dime-sized projectile, almost 400 thousandths in diameter, where some of them didn't deform at all. They maintained their shape, so it's a lot harder lead. So that was interesting. The ones that mushroomed a lot didn't exit. The ones that mushroomed a lot did not exit. The ones that didn't mushroom exited. So that was very, very interesting and eye-opening to see, that you can get through and through penetration with a 22. Now you're not expending any kind of hydrostatic shock or anything like that. But one of the things that you can run into with a 22 is, because they are a lower velocity and the rounds can expand, is you can get them where they'll ricochet around inside the body.
Right.
So you get a lot of times you can get a lot more organ damage or tissue damage because the round does stay inside the body cavity and ricochet around in there.
Right.
So that's one thing that, a lot of doctors really hate when someone comes in that's been shot with a 22, because they're like, I have no idea where the bullet is until they x-ray them.
Right.
Because it could enter up here and end up down here in their hip bone somewhere, because of the way it can bounce around inside.
Right. And he got all 10. Didn't he get all 10 rounds into the guy?
9 out of 11.
Yeah. So, I mean, but that was the other side of it. And the guy did die.
He did.
And the guy spent 2 years in jail until he was exonerated.
Yep.
And a lot of it had to do with Robbie's testimony because there was a lot of question about it. But the thing is it can. But guys, here's the thing. If you have to use a 22, typically they may die, but they may get you before they die.
Yep.
And that's probably one of the biggest things.
Well, and that's with a lot of handguns. A lot of people, a big misconception, from watching movies and stuff, people think that you get shot with a handgun and one time and you just fall down and die. And that doesn't happen in most cases, especially if you get someone that is, maybe high on narcotics.
Right.
They just don't. The impact of the round just doesn't have the effect that you think it's going to have. So you end up a lot of times you'll get a through and through shot and it's like no effect whatsoever. And because with a handgun, one of the big things, whether it's 22 or 9mm or 40 caliber or 45, once again, because it's a low velocity round, you're not introducing a lot of hydrostatic shock to the organs. You don't have this huge temporary wound channel that blows everything up and then it shrinks back down and you get this disruption of tissue with these lower velocity rounds. So it's basically like sticking someone with a knife or an ice pick. You just you poke a hole in them, and traditionally you either break bones and that's what stops them, or they bleed out and that's what stops the threat.
Well, John Correa over on Active Self-Protection, it's one of the things he talks about. He calls it the fudge factor. He says when you get hit, you're like, oh, fudge, I'm hit. And a lot of times that does stop, just that they've been shot. I know that if I was in a situation and I got hit, that would definitely affect me. Now, I may go ahead and keep fighting. Well, I would try to keep fighting. Do we have something? Okay. We got some questions.
All right. Scorched Earth Firearms Training asks, Such, are you going to NRA this year?
Yes, I'm going. We've already got our room. They changed it. And we had to change our rooms. But, yes, we will be in Houston. And looking forward to it. I'm tell you guys, if you've never been with it, and, of course, a lot of people get fired up about the NRA, and we're none of us, I think, are happy about it. But all the major gun companies are there, and you can go and see a lot of new things. And just the hall, the exhibit hall is worth going. And then, the other events, there's just a lot going on.
Well, and it's a great opportunity to get a group of like-minded people together for a few days.
Right.
Yeah. And that's one of the big things that's important to me, is that we can get all of these people that can rally behind one cause together for a few days to have some conversation with one another and check out some of the great new products that are out there.
Right. And you never know who you're going to run into. I mean, there's always great people out there. I mean, we ran into Alan West one time out there, and Dana Lash, and, of course, then there's a lot of YouTube guys out there. And if you want to, Hickok will be walking around, and he's 6'8", and then John's 6'9". So they're walking around. You see them from a mile away.
J Phone says, what's your take on the CZ Cadet as plinking gun 22 long rifle caliber?
I love it. I've got one and I love it. And it's easy to install. It's just really simple. I think the only thing you have to have beside the slide is you put the
different slide release
in.
Yeah, I think it's a great option as well, because you get your standard frame, magazines and everything. You get the same trigger pull. So it's basically like training with your pistol with a lower recoil impulse.
Right. That's right. So, yeah, I love them. Love them.
Defiantly Trail says, question, if relying on an AR-15 22 long rifle, what would be the best defense ammo?
Man, there's a ton of stuff out there. They've just released, and I don't know the name of it. They've just released, I think it was Federal maybe or somebody, that is self-defense ammo. Now, we haven't tested it. We don't know. But is there something you have in mind?
Yeah, I can tell you from a lot of the ballistics testing that I've done, and I've tested the majority of the stuff that's out there on the market. I like the CCI mini mags. They're about 1,150 or so foot per second, 1,200 foot per second, but it's a harder lead, and you don't get a whole lot of expansion with it. You get great penetration. And with a 22, a lot of the time, one of the big issues that you have is a lack of penetration with it. So that's one of the things I really like about the mini mags. You get great penetration.
And they have a small hollow point, but they still
doesn't expand, even the hollow points.
Through.
Yep.
DZ Ren says, question for Robbie and Such. Why are 22 caliber firearms in general so picky about the type of ammo they work well with?
Well, you think about it, you typically, you've got a low powered round and it's a very small bullet. So there's a lot less energy that's coming back, and that's the reason why you don't have much recoil.
And I don't think that the guns are as picky about the ammo that they use as they are the inconsistency with the ammunition from some different manufacturers. There's some manufacturers' ammo that just doesn't run very well in any gun, and then there's some manufacturers' ammo that runs well in all guns. Like the Fiocchi stuff works extremely well. The CCI stuff works extremely well.
But it's funny. Sometimes I can get a gun, and I like my Walther P22.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took it out, and then there was a lot of this is when they first came out. There was a lot of talk about certain kind of ammos.
Yep.
And I put some Federal bulk in it, and I had some issues. Go forward a couple of years after shooting it a lot, and I shot Federal. I shot whatever I wanted to in it.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes when you first get them, they may be kind of finicky. Maybe they're working out their bugs. They're working out a few things.
Well, I think too, one of the big issues that I've seen with a lot of 22s are manufacturers leave a sharp edge around the chamber. And that sharp edge on the chamber, when it goes to chamber around, the soft lead on the projectile will dig into that sharp edge, and that causes feeding issues. Or it'll dig into the brass case and jam feeding in. That causes issues.
Right.
And one of the things that you can do is go in and chamfer that edge and bevel that edge just a little bit, and it makes them feed so much better.
Right. So just send it to Robbie, and he'll do that for you.
Will Standridge asks, how long can 22 long rifles be stored? Or
well, if it's in a watertight, temperature-controlled place,
like we've talked about before, the thing that kills ammunition, that ruins ammunition, is moisture. Moisture will ruin ammunition. You get it wet, it's going to corrode your case. It's going to mess with your powder. It's going to mess with your priming compound. So if you keep it dry, it's going to last you indefinitely. We've talked about before, we still shoot ammo that was made during World War I. It's 100 years old, 100 plus years old, and we still shoot that ammo, especially like your 30-06 bulk stuff. There's so much of that out there. Or 8mm, absolutely. Just millions and millions of rounds that are still out there available that you can buy on the surplus market, and the ammo runs great because it's been stored in a dry environment. As long as it stays dry, it'll last indefinitely.
Yeah, because that lead, sometimes I have some boxes sometimes that I'm doing stuff with and they're sitting out,
Mm-hmm.
and the lead even starts to discolor and gets a little funny.
Yep.
So keeping it stored will definitely extend the life.
Kentucky Prepper 1971 says, Don, sent you a question a few days ago. Which bull leather belt do you recommend? Steel core or non-steel core? Sincerely, Matthew Dallas Horn.
Oh, hey, Matthew. Well, steel core definitely, is a great penetrator round. And, you're going to, belt. Oh, a belt. Duh. Okay. One thing that I like personally, and I've been wearing for years, Sarah Max over there shaking her head. One thing I like.
I went the same direction you did. So
is the
bull leather.
Bull leather, Dowtech Force bull leather belt.
Steel core or non-steel core?
Well, here's the thing, and I've got some of those even that have steel core. And I don't know if you can see it, but this belt, I've been wearing this belt for like 10 years. And I have about 7 of these belts. I wear the same one because it's rigid enough. The bull leather really holds up extremely well. And I'm carrying an outside the waistband holster on this one with a full steel firearm. And yet it retains it. But steel core will give you a little extra rigidity,
mm-hmm.
and it's going to give you a little better platform. That way there's less moving here. But for day to day, and it can be very uncomfortable, even with the when they have the cord, the card, like the polymer card through there or whatever. To me, sometimes they're just once I get them on, they're fine. But a lot of times I'll leave them hanging up. Now I also like the Core Essentials belt system. That is more comfortable. And when I go out to dinner and stuff, I'll wear the Core Essentials belt. And it ratchets. I mean, it's like solid. And it doesn't have a steel core. It's got more of a polymer surface. So it doesn't have that springy feel to it. So for me personally, and a lot of guys like different things, but for me personally, I like either a bull leather belt or the Core Essentials with that rigid part in it. But it's still
with the polymer
supple.
core.
It's still supple enough to where it can fit around my waist without a lot of trouble. So that's just my take.
Bob McAllister asked, "Hey guys, how do you help somebody with a really bad flinch?"
Well, what I like to do, and I've done. In fact, we had a bunch of ladies from our prepper group down at the down here at the range the other day, and I was watching one girl in particular. And so what I did was, and we talked about this a minute ago, is I said, "Okay, hold on." I said, "Let me see your gun." And so I said, "Just look that way." And I took it, and I took the round out of the chamber, put the magazine in, and then when she did it, she went like that, and without firing. So she knew exactly what she was doing, and she was like, "Oh, I see, I see." So I think one of the things is knowing it. But again, I think the big thing is if they're really having trouble with center fire, is to bring them back to 22 and let them just continue to train with 22 until they can move up to that. Would you say?
Yeah, I would. And I would go a couple of steps further too. One, when you take them out, have them dry fire before they ever load the magazine, load the gun. Rack the slide, point it at the target, line their sights up, pull the trigger. And that way they start getting used to the gun, the trigger breaking, the hammer falling before they actually start shooting the gun. Secondly, once you've done that, video them while they're doing that with a dry fire practice. And then once they load the gun and go with a loaded magazine, video them again when they're shooting with a loaded gun. And if there's any difference, if they're muzzle dipping, have them go back to dry firing, but then also show them the video so they can see what they're doing. Visualization, I found, is huge with someone when you're trying to train something, a bad habit out of them. Because a lot of times they can't see in their head what you see with your eyes. So if you can video it and then take it and show them what they're doing on video and be like, "This is what you did the first time. This is correct. This is what you did this time with the ammunition, and this is not correct." It'll click and it'll register with them a lot quicker.
That's good. That's good.
Kevin Walker asked, "Why are 22 long rifle revolvers like Smith & Wesson's have triggers that are so hard to pull? Can this be fixed without sacrificing reliability?"
Short answer is no. And the reason for that is you have to have a heavy enough mainspring in the gun to drive the hammer forward hard enough to reliably set the primers off. So what you get, you start playing with the springs in it. You try and go with a lighter mainspring to reduce the double action pull on the pistol. And you don't have enough inertia with the hammer to reliably ignite the primers. So that's why you have to have the heavier springs in the 22s, especially in the revolvers, to reliably ignite the primers.
Yeah, I've got one of the little stubby 22 Magnums, and it's definitely a much heavier trigger pull, but yeah, it makes it more reliable.
David Thomas asked, "Review on the Glock 25. Can it take an auto switch?"
So I don't think we have the Glock 25s in the United States.
Is that the 380?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, the caliber. Sometimes there are certain ones that we don't have as far as auto switch,
or some ones like the Model 25 is not one we can even get in the United States.
Right.
So that's not one that we can get our hands on to do any testing. And I'm not sure. I'm assuming that the auto switch would work in it because it works in all the other models. But I can't say for sure because I haven't tested it.
Lance Haymaker says, "Such, this is Lance from Charleston. You guys are great. I just got a CMMG conversion kit. What do you recommend as far as brand ammo to shoot?"
At this point, whatever you can get your hands on.
Fiocchi, the Fiocchi, they're copper wash bullets.
Yep.
Those are fantastic, 40 grain. And then CCI Mini Mags. CCI Mini Mags have been my favorites for years. The reason why I'm saying adding Fiocchi in there is that it performs the same. And so, usually your high velocity. Because ammunition right now is kind of spotty and it's hard to get, use it as a training tool.
Yeah.
Use it as, learning how to train. But here's the funny thing about the CMMG. I think, I've had one for years and I've shot a lot. And after a while, just like we were talking about before, I got to where I'll shoot whatever. I was shooting Federal bulk, just the lead round nose. And
once they get broke in, you've got a lot more options once you get it broke in as far as what it'll run with. One thing you do want to look out for if you're using a 22 conversion kit on your AR-15 is leading in your gas port and your gas tube. The 22 bullets, because they are soft lead, when the bullet goes down the barrel, it can skim a little bit of lead off of the bullet into your gas port, and that lead can get up into your gas block, and that can get into your gas tube. So if you do shoot a lot of 22 in your 5.56, you need to make sure you pull the gas block, pull the gas tube, and clean those real good after a few hundred rounds.
Yeah, it's because that would be because there's no way to really clean it unless you take it off. But it's real funny. One of the things about 22, and for some reason I've seen this for years, but I never really thought about it. It's the bullet is the same diameter as the case.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one solid piece, and so it's the same dimensions. And so when you're getting that, you're going to have some lead that could possibly come off.
Well, and the 22 is actually 1,000th smaller than the 5.56. The 22 measures 0.223, where the 5.56 or 223 actually measures 0.224 in diameter. So it's not going to be as accurate as it would be in like a match grade barrel, because there is a 1,000th. It is a 1,000th undersize, so it does have a little wobble going down the barrel. But for a training tool, it'll be sufficiently accurate.
Chris McDonald asked, for rifle barrel, what is the best length to achieve maximum velocity?
with a handgun, or I'm sorry, with a 22, 6 or 8 inches is really you've expended all of your powder at that point. And anything longer than that, you're just increasing the dwell time of the projectile in the muzzle. You're not really increasing velocity. So 16 inches on a rifle is, other than going with an NFA or building a pistol, is the longest or the shortest that you can go. So I wouldn't go any longer than 16 inches on a rifle.
And was that about 22? But according to other calibers, it would vary. It would vary as far as the barrel length.
Ryan Job asks, Such, I have a Winchester Wildcat that has trouble running CCI Minimax, Federal bulk, and even Remington bulk ammo. What do you suggest to get it to run correctly?
Let's see, Federal, Winchester, and Remington. I would go with CCI Minimax.
He just said
Yeah.
he's having trouble with that.
Oh, you're having trouble with CCI.
Yeah. So a lot of times what I've found, especially with those older guns like that, is somebody's dry fired it a bunch, and there's a dimple in the top of the chamber that's rolled a burr down into the chamber. If you can put a case in it, clean the gun well, put a case in, you should be able to turn the gun up and the case falls back out. If there's any drag or resistance whatsoever when you put the case in there, there's a burr that's been rolled down into the chamber and the chamber is going to need to be recut to clean that up. But I would almost be willing to bet that that's where your issue is.
That's why we have Robbie here. He's seen it all.
Joseph Allen asked, have you had any trouble with the Glock 44 M22?
It's funny because when I first got my 22, we went down to Glock and actually was there, and we shot like 5,000 rounds through it. And once it got a lot of lead in it, you had to stop and clean it because it would start to malfunction after a while. When I got mine, and guys, when they send one to me, which I buy, they send them to me for 90 days to test out, and I can send it back or buy it, and I always buy them. I had one malfunction, and it was the first magazine of the first round. And I sent my video. But after that, I've had no problems. And I've shot it since then quite a bit, and I've not had any problems. I do understand that there were some that had some problems, but I don't know. All I know is I have this one, and it runs. I've had a lot of people to tell me they have one, and they run.
Yeah.
But I've had other people that have said they've had some issues with them. But I have not. I have had one malfunction with mine, and I was running CCI, I think.
Well, and that's one of the things that I found over the years with a first production model of anything, whether it's a gun or a car or musical instrument or whatever
on your computer.
Exactly. Yeah. Most people tend not to buy the first production run because there's always bugs that need to be worked out, little things that they tweak and they fix. Some of it may be under a recall, some of it may not. It may just be things that they fix in the production process. But I've always found that there's little bugs with first production runs of anything.
Well, they test them and they do all this stuff, and then they get it out to the market, and so then it's the Wild West.
That's right.
And people are doing different things. All right, it's 12:45. We want to get back to. Thanks for all the questions. That was great. There were some good questions. We're going to get back to our list here. We have a list, it's right over there. So if you see me looking over there, I'm looking at my list. Better than trying to do this and get my glasses out. Okay, one thing about 22, it's really lightweight.
Yep.
Very lightweight firearm. It's easy to handle, easy to carry.
Lightweight ammunition.
Lightweight ammunition.
If you're if you're backpacking and need to carry a lot of ammunition with you, it's easy to throw 1,000 rounds in your backpack. Where if you're carrying a centerfire rifle cartridge, even like
1,000 rounds,
even like 5.56, I mean, that's a lot of weight. You're talking about 40 pounds of weight or so. Where with 22, you're looking at maybe 10 pounds of weight for 1,000 rounds. So that's significant when you're carrying it.
Yeah, it makes it really easy to carry. And two, you have your takedown models,
that's right.
which is really cool. Now there are some centerfire takedown models as well, but like the Ruger 1022 takedown, the Papoose. The Henry. I love the Henry survival rifle. That is so lightweight. It's just like, and it floats. So whether you're going boating, you're going hiking, you're going hunting in a survival situation, which a lot of people do. They kind of consider those as survival 22s. But there's a lot of practical application. In fact, I think that and I know it because I've done it, but the Henry will actually float in that when it's put in the case. And so, it's just one of those things that has a lot of versatility. If you're boating and you can carry a rifle in your boat, according to where you are, that's a great addition, to have that small. And two, because it seals up into a watertight little compartment, it makes it really handy. Yeah, right in the buttstock. So, but the Ruger 1022 takedown has become extremely popular.
It has.
And I've got one. I've had 1022s for years, but bringing that down. And two, I would highly recommend, guys, if you're looking for a semi-automatic 22, the Ruger 1022 is just the bomb.
Yeah. Well, it's the small block Chevrolet of 22s. Everybody and their brother makes aftermarket parts and accessories for it. You can trick it out from anything from changing the sights on it to basically stripping the gun down to nothing but the factory receiver and replacing every piece in the gun. There's aftermarket parts for it.
Yeah, we did in fact, I did a build one time. It was the kit. It was the Kid Innovative Designs. And the only thing that was left was the receiver.
Yeah.
Everything else was Kid Innovative. And it really slicked it up. And I've done some others, In fact, I think I've done about 3 of those builds. Done
the one with Kid. We've done the ones with Wilcoxon. Brownells. Yep.
There's a lot of different parts out there. So, and that's one thing to me about the 1022 that makes it really, really fun. And two, you can take that thing down to the bare bones without having any special tools.
That's right.
Really. I mean, it just comes, and that's not even the takedown. But then you got that heavier barrel, which gives you really incredible accuracy. Man, those things are tack drivers.
Or even I've got one with an aluminum tension barrel on it. So it's got an aluminum sleeve with a steel liner in it.
Right.
It is a laser.
Yeah. Well, that Wilcoxon
but still super light. It only weighs, with the optic on it, it's still only 5.5 pounds, 5.9 pounds or something.
Right. Not like the Kid. The Kid has that heavy stainless steel bull barrel. That thing is heavy, but I like that. I can put it on my bench, and I'm like, it is not going anywhere. It's like going teek, teek. But the Wilcoxon has a fiber optic sleeve over it, and
carbon fiber.
That's right. Yep. Carbon fiber. Well, I say fiber optic. That'd be wild. It'd be like, I couldn't even see your sights. So, having that just gives you some more capability to transform your firearm.
That's right.
And two, even like the Ruger 1020, the Ruger Mark IV, Wilcoxon, we did a whole thing with it. We put that accurizing kit in it.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, man, it made a world of difference. So there's a lot of fun things you can do. And of course you can do this with other firearms as well, but 22 is one of the most, adoptable firearms rather than the AR-15. That's probably the top. And then of course Glock's coming in. Yeah, Glock's coming in strong. And if you're looking for parts, Wheaton Arms. Okay, and so all right, now there's a number of firearms that I've always, as far as on the prepper side, on the survival side, that I recommend. And one is your handgun. And one of the things about a handgun is it's something that you can conceal, you can carry traveling without getting any attention. You can keep it in your glove box. A lot of times you can go over state lines, and according to the state, you want to check the laws. USCCA, they have this great reciprocity map. They'll tell you all the laws. But, going through different areas and having a handgun, that's your first line of defense. But a lot of people say the only reason I have my handgun is to get to my rifle. So having a good go-to rifle, is also one that I feel like that needs to be, that responsible, prepared citizens need to have. I'll just put it that way. Then a shotgun. Shotgun's your best home defense firearm. Now, I find myself a lot of times picking up my pistol. I just do. But a shotgun is an awesome piece. So that's number 3. Number 4 is more of a longer range option. Now, you may have an AR-15 that can get out to distance, but and that's fine. But also having something that you can actually hunt with, and use it for a longer range.
Yep.
And then number 5 is your 22. I think that is one of the essentials as far as if you are into firearms and you have different things. I think having a 22, whether rifle or pistol or both, but those to me are one of the big 5. It's really an element that you need to have. Okay, let's talk about some cons. We were going to talk about ballistics. Let's talk about ballistics, and we're going to cons. We'll talk about ballistics pretty quickly.
Okay.
Ballistics. Now, according to most resources, 150 yards is about the effective range of a rifle, but
22 long
rifle.
Right. But you can really reach a 22 out a lot further than that. We went and shot a 22 precision rifle match a few weeks ago, and we shot out to 215 yards, and we were using the Aguila subsonics and chronographed at about 875 foot per second. So they're a little below what is traditionally considered subsonic. That was out of a 16-inch barreled rifle as well. But so generally you look at 1,050 foot per second for your subsonic stuff, but this stuff was going a little slower, about 875. But even out at 215 yards, we were still only at like 825 foot per second.
Wow.
So it hadn't bled off a lot of velocity. A lot of people were like, why wasn't you shooting, CCI mini mags or something that's supersonic? But the reason you don't want to shoot supersonic at long distance is as that bullet goes through transonic destabilization phase, going from supersonic through transonic and into subsonic, the projectile destabilizes. And it's not nearly as accurate as it is if it just starts at subsonic and stays at subsonic, or starts at supersonic and stays supersonic. So
I learned something new today.
There you go. So we're shooting subsonics because we're not destabilizing the projectile as it goes through the transonic phase. And at 215 yards, I've still got more energy, more velocity. I'll say, not energy. I have more velocity than a 45 ACP.
Wow.
Does at the muzzle at 215 yards with a 22. At 300 yards, I'm still over 800 foot per second.
Wow.
So, and a lot of people are like, oh, well, it bleeds off velocity. 22 is not effective past 150 yards. You can reach out with a 22. We've shot out to 500 yards with a 22. And the only reason we didn't go further is I ran out of elevation.
You had to put a mortar. You had to have a mortar. The one thing is, to me, 22 is really underestimated in a lot of aspects.
Yes.
If you look on the box, traditionally, it'll say, dangerous within a mile and a half.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that a lot of people like to do, I've seen them on video, and I've done this myself, is, you have a creek or something or a lake, and you're shooting that 22 into the lake, but a lot of times they'll ricochet, and they can go up to 2,000 yards, and they may or may not kill.
Yeah,
but they can. So you got to have a lot of responsibility. Just because it's a 22 and you're like, oh, it's just 22, it does have lethality to it.
It does, absolutely.
If it's irresponsible. So be careful. Or if it hits steel, hits some kind of metal, it can actually ricochet that way. And so ricochets probably are one of the most dangerous things about 22 as far as other people.
Well, and we've seen that, with some of the steel that we shot it's got some pock marks and stuff in it where we have, it's been shot hundreds of thousands of rounds, just abused, right? And we've had 22 bullets that have hit a little divot in the target and turn, mushroom, and ricochet and come back at you. So
you got to duck really fast.
Or bleed.
You bleed. I got time to bleed. You got time to die. Okay. That was from Predator. Okay. Again, but there are limited ranges, and two, with real true effect of what the caliber was designed for, about 150 yards, but it reaches on out beyond that.
Yep.
Another thing is it fit for a self-defense caliber? I have a buddy of mine, and his wife's like, 22, that's it. Not shooting anything else. And she won't. She just won't shoot anything else. And so he's like, man, I don't know. He's tried different things, and she just, even 380, she's like, nah, I don't like that. So that's all she's willing to carry.
If she's, and I've said this for years, if a person is comfortable with a firearm, they're going to carry that firearm, and they're going to feel comfortable and confident using that firearm.
Right.
If it's something that they're uncomfortable with, be it because of the size, the grip, the weight, the caliber, the recoil, whatever. If it's something that they're uncomfortable with, they're going to tend not to carry it, and they're going to be more hesitant to use it if they have to.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So when it comes to something like that, if a 22A is all that you have, then guess what? That's your defensive weapon. If a 22 is all that you're comfortable with, then by all means use it as a defensive weapon, because like I've said before, and I'll say it till the day that I die, it's better than a rock.
Right, or a sharp stick.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah. And the thing is too is a lot of times they can get multiple shots.
That's right.
Whereas with something that's really, you know, and two, they're anticipating the recoil. They don't really want to shoot it, and they're missing the target.
Yep. So, and it allows you to create separation and create distance in between you and a threat.
Right.
So, yeah, would it be my first choice? No. But if it's my only choice, then I'm picking up a 22 100% of the time.
Heck yeah. Okay. And then as far as one of the other cons is, again, sometimes it can be a little more finicky. It can be a little more finicky than your center fire. And we kind of talked about that. So that's pretty much, I think that's it. I think we got through everything. And there's a lot of other things about 22 that are just a lot of fun. But guys, you know, again, it's just low recoil, low noise, low report. You know, it's a very enjoyable gun to shoot.
Yeah, we didn't even get a chance to dig into suppressors.
Well, that is something. Yeah, and in fact, I think we had it on the list.
That's one of the things with. I don't shoot a 22 anymore without a suppressor on it, and I very, very seldom shoot anything with my 22s that's not subsonic anymore, just because it's literally it's the only gun that you can get that is truly Hollywood quiet. You know, there you get a click, you can hear the sound of the firing pin hit. If it's a bolt action, that's really all that you hear. Especially with subsonic ammunition, they are incredibly quiet with a good suppressor on there.
Right, you don't have the racking of the slide if you have a bolt action.
No, nothing. Yeah. Just a click and then the bullet hitting the target.
Right.
And so you know, I'm a big proponent of using suppressors on 22s, especially for training or for competition, just because it allows you to communicate without having to wear hearing protection.
Right. Just makes it more comfortable.
It does.
A lot of fun.
It does.
So, and there's a lot of options out there with 22, and typically the suppressors are less expensive.
They are quite a bit less expensive. And you know, one of the things I tell people all the time, you guys and girls out there, if you're considering your first suppressor purchase, make sure that one of the suppressors that you buy are 22. If you've got to wait a year anyway, go ahead and spend the extra money and get a 22 suppressor along with whatever centerfire suppressor you're getting as well. You're going to end up getting more use out of that 22 suppressor than you do any of the other cans that you buy, just because they're more affordable and they're more enjoyable to take out and shoot.
Right. Okay, guys. Well, we really appreciate you guys being here, and a lot of great questions. And this
great
video
time today.
Yeah, we had a good time today. We do this every 2 weeks. We'll do a Such live, and then we do a Sensible Prepper live. And but let me just say this: next week we're not going to be able to do it. I hadn't even told you this yet. We're taking our homeschool seniors. So a number of seniors out of our homeschool group that we have a co-op, and we're going on their senior. We're taking them on their senior trip, my wife and I.
Awesome.
And everybody else is going to be here hanging out. But we're not going to be here. So we will not have it next week. But so in 2 weeks, we'll have one. But we really have a lot of fun. We really, again, appreciate you coming and watching. This will be a video that's permanent on YouTube. So if you just happen to want to go back and watch it, it's really funny. We'll have so many people watch it during the live, and then we'll have like a ton of people watching it afterwards.
That's right. Well, you know, this time of day, a lot of people have to work. You know, they've got these overbearing bosses that won't let them watch YouTube while they're at work.
What in the heck? Talk to your boss. But yeah, and we really appreciate Robbie for being here. Check out WheatonArms.com. Guys, it's a great resource for Glock aftermarket parts. And I mean, some of the best on the market, if not the best. And then also they do some custom work. And so you can go to the WheatonArms.com and check that out. And also GoMedGear.com. You want to check that out. And we do have a Such IFAC coming, and you can check the details out over at GoMedGear.com. And, you know, and that's one thing, guys, you definitely need is to have some kind of med kit when you're on the range.
Absolutely.
22, even 22, you definitely need to, especially if you have loved ones with you or friends. or somebody that's in the next bay. You know, I mean,
That's
it's
right.
always helping out people.
Absolutely.
But
and
be
make sure
prepared.
you sign up for our newsletter on Go Med Gear and Wheaton Arms as well. So we send out coupon codes, some gunsmithing articles and stuff in our biweekly newsletters. So make sure you check that out too.
And we appreciate Sarah Mack for being here. Also, we appreciate USCCA. Guys, again, if you're going out there unprotected, having USCCA is just like having peace of mind.
Yep.
And, you can go down to the link below. It is an affiliate link, but just check it out, see what you think. Because, guys, and there are others out there, but I highly recommend USCCA. Again, I've been a member for a number of years, and it's the liability self-defense insurance. If you're out there as a concealed carry holder without it, you're rolling the dice. So we really do, again, appreciate you guys being here. We're signing off. Be strong. Be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic.